Hey folks, welcome to another live stream of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you are all doing well. I want to give a shout out to the chat mod, the live chat mod, Shady J in the house, as well as Anthony Andras Emil, if I'm pronouncing that right. Hey bud, how you doing? It's 1 a.m. your time. I'm glad you're here, but I would be prioritizing sleep over this. But, hey, I'm glad you're here. Glad to have you. All right. So what are we doing this week? This week, we're going to be watching another of the Tales of the Ring videos. They've got a whole series of stuff. And I was just really impressed last week with the quality of their stuff. So we're going to watch another one. In a few minutes. I want to give people time to show up. I promised Macaru 112 I would wait for him to get it. So Macaru, if you're showing up, I expect to see you say something in the chat. Let me know you're here, brother. Since he is the one that suggested all these fine videos. Yes, I have checked out the Silmarillion soundtrack. I've actually checked out quite a few channels, low key. There's a lot of good stuff out there. There is a lot of good stuff out there. Like, I could literally just have my live streams be highlighting other people's good stuff, right? And to a certain degree, I may end up doing that because it's better than, what the big corporations have been giving us, right? So I have checked out the Silmarillion soundtrack. It's interesting. I was actually sent a link to somebody had done some music. They had done their interpretation of the music of the Ainur. It was music. They wrote this musical piece for it, and I really, really liked it. And I'm sure some of you guys are probably familiar with the video that I'm talking about. Yes, exactly. We do need more in our culture war to keep, the places we like to get away to and take a break from the real world absolutely. I could do that too. So yes, to follow up on what you're both saying, yes, we do need more spaces where fans of Tolkien and fantasy genre, high fantasy, can get together and sort of just like let go. Everything doesn't have to be representative of the modern world. Sometimes you want to take a break from the modern world, right? And so we need more spaces like that. And yes, absolutely. Like I said, I've said it before in individual videos that I've put out throughout the week, as well as I think last week on the live stream. I have no problem using my channel to highlight other people's channels. A lot of times, content creators get into this mindset that like everybody is in competition with it. Like, if you do good, it must mean that I'll do bad, and if I do good, it must mean that I'm doing better than you. I kind of don't see it like that. I sort of see it as like, if you're putting out really good stuff and I'm putting out really good stuff, I have no problem. My ego is secure enough that I have no problem using my channel to highlight your stuff. If I think that your stuff is that good, I want people to subscribe to you. I want people to support your channel and your creative endeavors, because that's what a fandom's supposed to be about, right? It's like a community and stuff like that. So I got no problem with that. If other people want to direct people to this channel and be like, hey, he tries to stay away from the politics. He's not about everything's political. He's more just about the Tolkien and the fandom and the fantasy. Then yeah, you can direct people here. But in the same time, I have no problem using my platform to highlight other people's creative endeavors, and I'll do it because I think it's a worthy thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do. Yes, yeah. When Tales of the Rings and the video that we watched last week, when they started off with the Oath of Feanor and stuff like that, that was sick. Like, that people, like, I always knew that people actually study the language, like the Elvish languages. was it not Tengwar, Quenya and all of that, and Noldoru Quenta. Okay, if I'm screwing that up, I apologize. It's been a long day. But yeah, like I don't have the patience to learn another language. I know a couple of words, right? Like I know Maya Govanin, Melanin, which is the greeting. Um, but that's about the extent of what I can speak in anything that resembles fluency, right? And you guys, if you watch my video, you've seen me sort of mess up on pronunciations of locations or stuff like that in the past. It's a skill set you have to work at to get going, and I wholeheartedly am impressed with those folks who can do it, and they've invested the time to be able to speak it fluently and stuff like that. So yeah, more power to them. So I want to just give it a few more minutes before we start with the video, because I did well. Thank you, Anthony. It would certainly seem that way, wouldn't it? It would certainly seem that way. Um, yeah, if my biggest thing with that is I could understand the writers, Pain and Decay. I could understand them, showrunners and all that, producers, not being knowledgeable, not being, but they actually had quote unquote experts, Tolkien scholars that they brought in after they got rid of the Tolkien scholar, Shippey, right? When they let him go over some BS nonsense, right? He said too much in an interview with a German magazine, right? Which I think is just a cover story. I think that they probably realized that he was probably fighting them tooth and nail to not do the things they ended up doing. Yeah, that's true. Casual readers know more than the entire crew. The showrunners do have the same attitudes as politicians, but yeah, like my biggest thing was like all these quote unquote Tolkien scholars that they did quote bring on board. I'm calling BS on that one, guys. I'm sorry. You cannot call yourself a Tolkien scholar and consult a multi-billion-dollar or a billion-dollar production and let them deviate that far from the lore and just destroy so much, literally in just the first season. I'm sorry. So those Tolkien scholars in my book, I believe Maria, I think Maldonado was her last name, but I could be wrong on that. I'm calling shenanigans on her credentials. I don't buy it. Anyway, the D&D Civil War. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I kind of didn't cover it because it was getting a lot of coverage from a lot of different sectors, both the D&D specific sector, the fantasy genre sector, like the whole Critical Role, if you guys are familiar with that channel and their stuff. A lot of people were covering it, as well as some channels that do the same as I do, and talk about this stuff. My philosophy, I'm an old school D&D gamer. I remember playing second edition and third edition. And I was sort of on the tail end by the time fourth edition was coming out. Like I was sort of like in my grown up adult phase, where it was all about like, well, I got to build my career, blah, 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 blah. Don't have time for Dungeons and Dragons. And then with the fifth age stuff, I'm like, or fifth edition stuff, I should say. I don't know. I sort of I haven't liked the direction that Wizards of the Coast has been going with it for a long time now, since easily the mid '90s, late '90s. I haven't liked it, so that's why I kind of didn't want to cover it because there was nothing I would have to add of value to any conversation. I mean, if you guys want me to cover it on my channel, I can. It's just in the past when I've sort of drifted away from Tolkien stuff, you could see the views are significantly less than when I talk Tolkien. So that's why I've sort of focused in with Tolkien. But if there's a desire for folks, for you guys want me to cover more D&D related stuff, or even Elder Scrolls or Dragonlance related stuff, yeah, just let me know. I can talk about that shit forever, pardon my French. But yeah, I didn't feel I had anything to contribute to the conversation. I thought the OGL 1.1 was garbage, like it was over the top ridiculousness. But yeah, it's the School of Frankfurt attacking the Legendarium, the same as Hasbro attacking D&D. TTRPG is like a starter to get into Western fantasy. ODD and AD&D. Yeah, D&D 3. Yeah, Dragonlance, yes. Make an intro. No spoiler video, please. All right. I mean, I can talk Dragonlance. Yeah, a huge Dragonlance fan growing up. Huge. I must have in my shed in a box, I've got at least 40 Dragonlance books, easy, including obviously the original six, the Chronicles trilogy and the Tale of the Twins trilogy. Amazing books, amazing books. The priest in your local church supported us during the D&D hysteria, saying they're fighting evil and demons. They're doing the Lord's Ooh. Okay. Yeah, they're doing the Lord's command. Yeah, see, when we were playing D&D, it was sort of like low key D&D that we were doing because I grew up in New York City, so it was like in our apartment, right? And my parents were hippies. So they didn't care. Like actually they thought they were like if you guys really want fantasy, read Tolkien. So like I guess we kind of didn't get caught up in the whole hysteria and stuff like that. It was kind of viewed like all of our parents would rather us be playing Dungeons and Dragons and nerding out than getting into trouble on the streets. So it was kind of viewed as the lesser of two evils, I suppose. Dragonlance Fifth Edition books look so generic, like a work. Yes, like a woke college diversified neighborhood. Absolutely. Yeah, I think when they started sort of trying to dip back into the well, and they came out with there was that first book because they had the original Autumn Twilight and Winter's Night and Spring Dawning, and then I think it was like Summer Flame was the one, and it was supposedly like the children, and so at that point they started losing me. Yes, fifth edition ring. Yes, is the Rings of Power of Dungeons and Dragons. Absolutely, I would totally agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I'm again. Second edition, third edition, dabbled a little bit in the fourth edition. Had no thing for the fifth edition. Had no interest in it whatsoever. We were playing D&D, and our parents were happy that we were. Yeah, exactly. Like my parents were like, "Listen, I'd rather have them sitting here, drinking Pepsi and eating Munchos, till all hours of the morning, talking about their dragons and dwarves and elves than out in the street, getting high or getting arrested and getting into who knows what sort of trouble." Yeah, that's how they viewed it. So they were like, hey, if that's what y'all want to do, that's what you do. And like I said, I thought it was the irony is that my parents being hippies, whenever their friends would come over and see us all sitting around a table playing D&D, they would always say the same thing. If you guys really want fantasy, check out Tolkien. And of course, as kids, we kind of blew them off like, yeah, right, or okay, whatever. But then, of course, when you get my hands on Tolkien, it was just like, oh my God, they were so right. Let's see, what do we got here? And improving reading history and the like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, if you guys want to see more Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance, Elder Scrolls stuff, as you can see, I got the banners. I'm a huge Elder. It's reversed on my screen. Sorry, guys, but I'm a huge Elder Scrolls fan as well. So yeah, I could talk about that stuff. Like I said, I've just sort of I look at the metrics on the channel, and I see that like I can pop out a video that's Tolkien related or Rings of Power related, and break 1,000 views in a day. Whereas when I've put out sort of other stuff, let's just say, like not Tolkien, it tends to peter out significantly less. So I kind of realized, all right, well, maybe the people that are checking out my channel prefer I stick to the Tolkien stuff. But if you guys want to see that other stuff, I have no problem with it because I'm into that stuff. I'm really into that stuff. All right, so it's been a bit. It's been a minute. Macaru, if you're there, buddy, let me know in the chat. If not, we're gonna get started watching this video. And Anthony's it's in the middle of the damn night, so I don't want to keep people waiting. So let's check out this video, see what it's about. Let's see if the Tales of the Ring folks can keep their momentum going and give us another really, really good one. So let me get it situated. All right, here we go. All right, guys, let's check it out.
While Melkor was imprisoned in the halls of Mandor, there was peace in Arda. But hidden far away in the ruins of the north, Mairon and Gothmog continued the works of their master. Many were the orcs that were bred in those days, and they were biding their time, secretly repairing their stronghold in the west of the Iron Mountains. However, in the northwestern parts of Middle-earth that were called Beleriand, the free people lived in peace. While most elves were migrating to Valinor, some of the Teleri chose to stay behind and linger on the shores of Beleriand at the Bay of Balar. In this, they followed Osse's advice, who was a vassal to Ulmo. With him, they developed a great friendship, and he taught them shipbuilding so that they became the first mariners in Middle-earth. These mariners became known as the Falathrim, who settled on Beleriand's western shores, building themselves havens at Brithombar and Eglarest under their leader Noe, later known as Círdan the Shipwright. Northeast of the Falas, far across the lowlands of West Beleriand, was a realm of forests about the great river Sirion. There, Elwë gathered his people after his return from the forest of Nan Elmoth, where he had spent 200 years with his love, Melian the Maya. From then on, Elwë was known as Eleuthingol, and he claimed lordship over all the lands in Beleriand. He was acknowledged as High King of all the Teleri in Beleriand, and his people were known as Sindar, or the Grey Elves. His kingdom was composed of the forests Neldoreth, Nivrim, and Region. Additionally, the forests of Brethil and Nan Elmoth were held as part of Eglador. In that time, descendants of the ancient dwarf houses of the Broadbeams and the Firebeards united and crossed the Blue Mountains into Beleriand and established their great cities. With her sister realm Nogrod, Belegost was dug deep beneath Mount Dolmed. But those were all Sindarin words for Gabilgathul and Tumun Zahar in Kuzdul, the language that their creator, the Vala Aule, whom they call Mahal, had devised for them. The two cities lay in the central part of the mountain range of Ered Luin, where each guarded one of the few passes through the mountains. Thus, they were of utmost importance for the passing of information as well as goods. The dwarves soon met the Sindar elves of Beleriand, who called them Naugrim, the stunted people, and they established a trading relationship with each other. For many years, the trade relations grew strong, and the dwarves of Nogrod were employed by Thingol on Melian's advice. The dwarves labored long and learned much from Melian the Wise, and Thingol rewarded them for their service with many fair pearls from the shores of the Isle of Balar. In the midst of the forest, into a rocky hill where the river Escalduin divides Neldoreth and Region, the dwarves built mansions after the fashion of their folk, carved deep into the earth. And they built a bridge of stone over the river, by which alone the gates that they had raised could be entered. But beyond the gates, wide passages ran down into the halls far below. And because they were so many, that stronghold was named Menegroth, the 1,000 Caves. The Naugrim would come often over the mountains and traffic on a long road that ran from Belegos to Nogrod, into Beleriand, and finally to Menegroth. Years later, evil creatures were sighted roaming far and wide, learning the ways of the land.
Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Liberty
What the heck?
Mutual.
What the
They
heck?
customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Oh,
And
YouTube.
by switching, you could even save $652.
Sorry,
Thank you,
guys, it's
Liberty
embedded.
Mutual. Now, contestants ready? Go!
There we go.
This, the dwarves told King Thingol, and they were gravely concerned therefore. There are fell beasts, they said, in the lands east of the mountains. And the dark elves that dwell there, your ancient kindred, are flying from plains to the hills. Through time, those evil creatures indeed came to Beleriand, over passes in the mountains and up from the dark forests. Wolves there were, or creatures that walked in wolf shapes, and other fell beings of shadow. And the dwarves forged weapons and armor for the elves, and Thingol's armories were stored with axes and with spears and swords, tall helms and long coats of bright mail. Together, they drove out the evil creatures, and for a time there was peace again. But east of the Blue Mountains in Eriador dwells some of the Nandor that wandered around the Anduin in the time of the Great March. Their road had led them to the mouths of Anduin, and they dwelt there long. But some of them came north again, passing by the White Mountains and entering the wilderness of Eriador, between the Ered Luin and the Towers of Mist. These were woodland folk that had no weapons of
Macaroon.
metal, and they were troubled by the fell beasts of the north, just as the dwarves had said. So Denethor, son of Lenwe, led many of the Nandor into the west, far across the Blue Mountains, after hearing rumors of the might of Thingol's realm. Thingol welcomed them as long-lost kin, and they made their dwelling in Ossiriand, the land of the seven rivers. In Beleriand still at whiles rode Oromi the Great, passing like a wind over the mountains, and when the Valaroma his horn echoed in the hills, the elves knew well that evil things fled before him. But after Melkor slew the trees of the Valar with Ungoliant, he came back to Middle-earth. Far in the north, a great cry was heard, and echoed through Beleriand, and all its folk shrank in fear. Soon after, the terror of darkness came into the realm of King Thingol, but by the power of Melian it was stayed, and it made its abode thereafter in Dorthonion, and the mountains beneath it became known as Ered Gorgoroth, the Mountains of Terror. And ever after there dwelt foul offspring of Ungoliant, giant spiders that wove their hideous webs. There, light and life was strangled, and all waters were poisoned. But Melkor, now known as Morgoth, went to the Iron Mountains, and with aid of his servants, he delved anew his vast vaults and dungeons of Angband. The gates of Angband were 150 leagues away from the bridge of Menegroth. Now the orcs that had multiplied in the bowels of the earth grew strong and fell, and Morgoth filled them with a great lust for ruin and death. They set forth from the gates of Angband under the cloud that Morgoth had released, and passed in silence into the highlands of the north. The Dark Lord's forces poured in from the north in two main hosts, one through the Vale of Sirion in the west, and the second through the gap in the mountains between the rivers Aros and Gelion in the east. Thus, Morgoth cut off Thingol from Círdan at Eglarest. Some of the Orc bands even climbed the passes of Anach and Aglon. In the wide realm of Thingol, many elves wandered free in the wild or dwelt in small kindreds. Only about Menegroth in the midst of the land, and along the Falas in the west, there were numerous people. Therefore, Thingol led out as many of the Sindar as he could muster, and they hastened from the forest of Region to fight the first battle in the wars of Beleriand. When the battalions of orcs entered the domain of Thingol, the king's main focus was on the bulk of the eastern host, which was pressing his allies in the southeast. King Denethor made his stand there with the Lyquendi of Osiriand, but the Green Elves were light-armored, and no match for the orcs, who were shod with iron and bore great spears with broad blades. The Lyquendi were cut off and surrounded by a sea of foes, and their forces were pushed back into the Amon Ereb. Then from the north, Thingol's army came upon the enemies with great force, and they drove into their rear guard and surrounded them. But when the Sindar army had broken the line of its enemies, they found that the elves of Osiriand were almost defeated, and their king slain, along with his nearest kin. Bitterly was Denethor's death avenged. When Thingol's army drove the orcs to flight further west, north of Andram, there the orcs were utterly defeated, and those who managed to flee northward were slain by the dwarves that came from Mount Dolmed. The Green Elves lamented Denethor's death ever after, and never took a king again. And when some of them returned to the land of the Seven Rivers with word of bloodshed and war, the remnant of their folk was filled with great fear, and they never came forth in open war again. But news from the west was devastating. The bulk of the western Orc host that had camped on the plain between Narok and Sirion was now marching through West Beleriand, ravaging and plundering. Led by Círdan, the elves of the Havens came out to meet them, but were defeated and forced to retreat into the walled cities of Eglarest and Brithombar, which were then besieged. Thus, the Falas were overrun, and no help came from Thingol, who withdrew all his folk that his summons could reach into his realm within Neldoreth and Region. Then Melian put forth her power, and she fenced all that domain with an unseen wall of shadow and bewilderment. The girdle of Melian, that no one could pass against her will. This inner land, which was long named Eglador, was now called Doriath, the guarded kingdom. The havens of the Falas were besieged, and the sorrows of the sailors of the Falathrim continued for months, until suddenly a great fire appeared in the northwest, a great burning in the Firth of Drengist.
Wow, that was damn good. Damn good. Well done, Makaru. Well done. I'm digging these a lot. I want to get all the credits on screen, because the people that put the work into this deserve to be, get the credit. So yeah, I gotta say, pretty impressed.
At Gerhardt's
pretty
Appliances,
freaking
never
impressed,
been a better
dude.
time
Nice. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. I'm digging there. I'm digging their stuff. To be honest with you, the Tales of the Ring stuff. I like the work that they put in. Again, I've mentioned on my videos, I have somewhat of a background in doing visual effects and motion graphics. So I know a lot of what goes into what they did on screen there. And bravo to them. That was absolutely awesome. I like that one as much as I liked the first one that we did last week. Don't mind me. I'm just catching up on what was going on in the chat while I was watching that. Sorry if I wasn't responding because I was really getting into the video. Yep. Yeah. Almost made me speechless, Macro. Almost made me speechless. Only this time I was smart enough to focus on adjusting the conversation so I would actually have something to say. If it was just like about the quality of what I just watched, again, I would be speechless because I'm really digging those. I'm really liking what those guys and gals are doing. I think it's pretty badass. And yeah, like you were saying in the chat, it's a shame that Amazon with $1 billion couldn't put out over 8 1-hour episodes that were more interesting than the 15-minute video we just watched. And the 15-minute video that we just watched was more accurate to Tolkien's lore, to the whole vibe, the whole feel of what Tolkien was trying to do. Yeah, and it just goes to show that, just if you've got $1 billion, that doesn't mean you're going to make a good show, right? If you don't care about the lore and respect the author and what they were trying to do, it won't make a difference. As you just saw, the Tales of the Ring YouTube channel is just killing it right there. Yeah, a movie version of that would be off the freaking hook. I would actually, that would be something. Yeah, okay, I'd make a night of it and spend all the money at the concession stand, because it's not like back in the day when going to the movies was like a $20 venture. Now it's like $100 minimum between all the the snack stuff and the ticket prices and whatnot. But you know what? If that was a full scale movie with like a New Line Cinema budget behind it, like what we just watched from Tales of the Ring, yeah, I would definitely. I would drop the $100 to go watch that easy. I would take Mrs. J, Just J, to go see that. Absolutely. Yeah, right. Exactly. We'd have like a subscriber get together, right, where we'd all just do like a party and we'd like rent out the theater for the night and just like watch it on the big screen. That would be freaking amazing. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think of that, about the Tales of the Ring and what they're doing. If you're digging it, if you're thinking that they're on point, it was I like the way they were showing the maps, so you kind of got the sort of tactical, strategic view of the war that was going on. Because I know when you're reading it, a lot of things, it gets murky a lot of times, especially if you're not somebody who's familiar with say real-time strategy games or stuff like that. Absolutely. Well, what we're gonna do is usually because there's so many, I like doing like one of those videos because that's usually like half the show, right? Like, because if I'm gonna stream for an hour, according to the clock on my streaming software right here, I'm just about coming up on 40 minutes that we've already been streaming. So I like to just do one of those and then use the second half of the show to talk about other things. Yeah, I haven't checked my email yet. I've got like so many windows open. Like I'll have to see if I can pull that up. But yeah, what I want to do is I wanted to talk about, because there's another article I wanted to run by you folks live and get some of your opinion, your feedback live, sort of similar to what I would normally do. Now, don't, Macro, no need for apologies. Like I said, it's just, again, there's no set format here. I'm just sort of winging it and finding things that I think are interesting, and I would like to get feedback from you guys and stuff like that. So there's no set format, so don't worry there's no need to apologize. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was this article here, which was from MovieWeb, and it was just from a couple of hours ago, and it says, "The Lord of the Rings, should Middle-earth be a cinematic universe?" Okay, and basically they make the argument, the immense depth of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth makes The Lord of the Rings an ideal candidate for a cinematic universe, but should it be one? It's only the second live, so it's okay. Yeah, don't worry about it, dude. like I said, we'll make it up as we go. Eventually, things will sort of fall into a rhythm and a pattern, and we'll just sort of take it from there. But it's cool. And like I said, if you sent me shorter ones, I may wind up next live stream, getting like a bunch of the shorter ones and just doing them back to back to fill up the same amount of time. So we'll see. A proper film universe could see. Okay, well, the argument. Okay, they make the argument that that's the case, right? That Tolkien's universe per se is actually there's enough depth to it that it could support a proper cinematic universe, right? But they also, and much to their credit, they also make the point that would you want to though? Because even the best cinematic universes, right? MCU, for example, over time, the quality tends to start to take a dive. You tend to bring in all these other directors and writers, and everybody's got a different vision and a different direction. And, as much as us Tolkien fans would want to see a cinematic universe based on Tolkien's legendarium, and I think there's enough material there for it, the question then becomes, do you want to do that? Because what happens when you get the Kathleen Kennedys and the Ryan Johnsons trying to do the Beren and Luthien story, or trying to tell the tale of Huron, right? And they're concerned about subverting your expectations or putting their take on it. You know what I mean? So part of me is like the Tolkien fan in me is like, absolutely, I would love to see a cinematic universe based on Tolkien. But the realist in me is like, not in today's climate. Yeah, like you said, Makaru, if they presented it as the godfather of it all, as an homage to but yeah, would we want to? We got one. We wouldn't make fun of anymore. Just don't make it in this climate. Yeah, absolutely. It began with theater long before Peter Jackson. Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, I think there's too many potential pitfalls in today's entertainment industry, the climate of today's entertainment industry, with directors and writers and showrunners and everybody wanting to put their spin on it, that I would be afraid that you might have something like War of the Rohirrim, right, which is coming out next April, right? You might have something like that, which is yes, Peter Jackson, I would definitely. Yeah, Peter Jackson can helm it, although even Peter Jackson needs to not let studio executives have any say. One of the problems I had with the Hobbit adaptations was the whole dwarf female elf love story. And actually, the backstory is that wasn't supposed to be in there, and actually Peter Jackson was not particularly happy about that, but the studio executives felt they needed a strong female elf presence and a quote-unquote romantic story at the same time to sort of bring in that young female audience. That, remember, this is Hollywood execs talk. This is not my opinions. This is how they view young women, right? As wanting a quote unquote romance story. And so Peter Jackson didn't really want, I think her name was Turiel. If anyone remembers the name of her character in The Hobbit, the female elf, Peter Jackson didn't want any of that, but the studio executives were like, no, we want this in there. So if Peter Jackson can have like creative control, right? Yeah, I don't trust the estate either. Turiel, thank you. Yes. I don't, the Tolkien estate with Simon in charge, I don't trust it either. But to bring it back to what I was saying, yes, I would definitely watch it with Peter Jackson doing it as long as he had final say. If producers and studio executives are looking to check boxes, oh, we need a romance in here, we need a strong female in here, and they're going to override Peter Jackson, then I would just as soon not have you do it. It was a cool backstory. Yes. Thingol was. That's I'm trying to. I'm a stupid American. I'm trying to do the 2.5 meters tall. That's what, like almost 7 foot. 7 foot. For us Americans who are still using outdated systems. I think that's about right. Right, guys, let me know if I'm just talking out of my butt here. But yeah, so again, it's one of those things where I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Oh, 8.2 feet tall. Thank you. Yeah, I told you again. Sorry, I'm an American. I'm still stuck using our antiquated system, so it's hard when somebody throws out like things like meters and stuff like that. I try to do the conversions and I never get it right. But yeah, I would love to see a cinematic universe based in Tolkien. Again, I there's absolutely more than enough content for it. Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right, yeah, next time I'll Google it. But I just don't think in today's entertainment industry, I don't think they could do it properly. I don't think they would do it properly. I think you would see it like Star Wars, right? Where you've got so much Star Wars stuff coming out, some of it being really good, like season 1 or season 2 of Mandalorian, and maybe Andor, and then other stuff just being complete, like, dumpster fire trash, like Book of Boba Fett, where they totally just destroyed the character in the process. So I don't know. I don't. I would love there to be a Tolkien cinematic universe. I just don't think that today's modern entertainment industry could do it any justice. I think they would go off the rails too quickly, too soon, and you would get, seriously, quote unquote, the tale of Beren and Luthien made for a modern audience and to reflect our modern times. And I don't think I want to see that, to be honest with you. I simply don't. Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Like I said, there is good stuff out there. I just don't think it's coming from the mainstream media at this point. I think it's more the guys like, exactly. Yes. That should be code. Whenever you hear for a modern audience, just know that whatever it is that's being adapted is probably not going to be what you were hoping. That's sort of like my yardstick on at this point. Whenever I hear, oh, it's for a modern audience or it reflects our modern times, I always just sit there and go, okay, this is not going to be what I thought it was going to be, which is one of the reasons why I'm not particularly happy about the Rings of Power. I'm cautiously optimistic about War of the Rohirrim. So far, I have no reason to doubt that they're going to be able to pull it off, but you never know. But this is also one of the reasons why I'm cautiously optimistic about the new Dungeons and Dragons movie that's coming out. One of the reasons why I don't know if I would want them to do a Dragonlance adaptation. There was a time when I would have given my right arm for a Dragonlance live action adaptation. Nowadays, with the current state of Hollywood, I don't know. I think sometimes just leave it as is. Let me have my fond memories and have the books that I can go back to, and don't sully it with modern audience versions. Yeah, it did. Red Sonja did. It did have hope. And like I said, there's times when they've actually adapted stuff relatively good, like when they did Conan the Barbarian. Obviously that's old now, but I'm old enough to have been out when it was released, or old enough to have been around when it was released. I thought that was a great fantasy genre film, and from what I understand, it was, I mean, not dead on to the comic books, but it had the spirit of the comic books, and so it was a decent adaptation from what I heard. Yeah, I grew up on all that stuff. I'm make no bones about it. I'm a fantasy junkie. But yeah, it's just with Hollywood today. I don't know, guys. I as much as I may want a cinematic universe of Tolkien, things like this, like what you see on screen right now, scare the ever-living crap out of me. That's what I'm afraid all of my Dragonlance and Dungeons and Dragons and Tolkien's Legendarium, I think it's all going to be devolved into this if Hollywood is allowed to continue pumping this stuff out. And that's why I don't support it. Yes, exactly. We live during the golden age of fantasy. No, I don't want to get it, and I don't want to get it raw. No, that's a big negative, Anthony. No, especially not from Doran the Fourth. But yes, again, it's just see this that again. War of the Rohirrim looks promising. Cautiously optimistic on this one. Cautiously optimistic. Only because it's Warner Brothers and they're saying that they're tying it in directly with the Peter Jackson films. You know what I mean? So that's what's giving me hope. But I mean, if you compare this adaptation to what we got with this monstrosity, I mean, come on. Like, it's insulting to put them both on the same screen. I'm sorry. Like this is how I want to remember my fantasy. I don't want to I just don't want to see it get sullied and, treated like it's the small guy in the cell block. Um Yes, cautiously optimistic. Yeah, you have to be at this point. Again, and I look for the buzzwords, right? If you hear like, a modern reimagining, a modern retelling, a modern adaptation or for modern audiences, reflecting our current times, reflecting a modern sensibility, those are all code words for we're changing shit. I mean, the animated one from the 70s? Wow. Okay, here's my take on that. From what because it's been a while since I'll see it. I'll be straight up honest with you. It's been a while since I've seen it. I did see it, but I think the last time I seen it was years and years and years ago. Um, it was okay. I remember. I don't know. It might have been because it was animated. I kind of was like, on some of it. I thought it was okay. It wasn't like insultingly bad, if that makes sense. It was more like it's all right. I would prefer certain things have been changed, but that's just me. Um, yeah, yes, it does. War of the Rohirrim showed how amazing it was, helmed by a man who knew Tolkien and wrote many things and added to. Yes, absolutely. It was okay. Like I said, as far as the animated, I haven't seen it in a while. I should go back and watch it. I have it. I should go back and watch it again. Um, I just remember being like, I don't know, maybe I was just too like full of myself in terms of what I was expecting from it, or maybe it was because I watched it around the time Peter Jackson's films were still recent. Um, that my point of comparison was unjustly not leveled. Um, yeah, it definitely it's got good and bad. Like I said, my memory of the last time watching it was being like, I'm glad it's Tolkien. It's mostly on point, but at the same time, I was a little about it. Um, I my thing about it is I don't. I don't like the look of some of the characters. Maybe that's just me being too picky. Um, you know, and again, that might have been because my last memory of watching it was in relation to the Peter Jackson stuff. Um, some of the looks of certain characters, Gollum and others, I'm kind of like, um, yeah, uh, true, yeah. I see. I didn't hate it because everybody else did. I just was kind of like on the fence about it. I guess I still am to a large point, or for the most part. I'm on the fence about it. I thought it was good, but could have been better. But that's just my take. But I mean, so yeah, I don't think Hollywood right now is in any position to do any of these things justice. I think a big indicator, and you guys, we'll talk about it since you guys were saying you want me to include more Dungeons and Dragons, more Dragonlance, more Elder Scrolls stuff onto the channel. I will start to incorporate that stuff because I can go off on tangents for just as long about that stuff as well. But I think a big indicator will be when the Dungeons and Dragons movie comes out. If they lean too hard into the fun, good time, goofy aspect side of Dungeons and Dragons, I could see that being problematic for that film and future films and adaptations, because that's one of the big things I've which on that note legitimizes the series. Think of yeah. So everyone, she'd play Galadriel again on many occasions, and so we should just get a big fundraiser. You know what? I would love to do that. No, I have not. I've heard of it. I've seen some YouTube stuff related to Vox Machina, but I haven't seen it. I can honestly say I have not seen it. Yeah, in terms of the D&D, I think as long as they don't lean too hard into the goofy aspect of it. Remember, there were a couple of other Dungeons and Dragons movies that came out, I think in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. The problem with those as a Dungeons and Dragons fan, again, it was one of those things, was that they leaned too hard on the goofy side. They went too far with it, and so it sort of undercut the whole film, and it was hard to take seriously when you have one of the Wayans brothers running around acting like a buffoon. Yes, I would, again, and I said this before, I'll say it again. There was a time I would have given my firstborn for a live action Dragonlance adaptation. Absolutely no hesitation, without a second thought. Nowadays, with the current state of Hollywood, I'm just like, don't friggin' touch it, because you will do nothing but ruin it. I could already, just by the nature of some of the characters, if you're familiar with Dragonlance, it's an ensemble cast, sort of like Fellowship of the Rings. It's very much inspired. It's got a Tolkien vibe, and you could tell that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, who were the writers of Dragonlance, were definitely inspired by Tolkien, no doubt about it. And I've actually spoken with them. I won't say that I'm friends with them, but I actually have had direct conversations with Margaret Weiss. I had a brief conversation with Tracy Hickman, and even Larry Elmore. I almost was in talks to commission a piece of artwork from Larry Elmore, and this is going back late 90s. But was made a generic woke college joint. But yes, it was. It was absolutely. They neutered it, for lack of a better term. Wizards of the Coast has simply. I don't even recognize Dungeons and Dragons compared to what it used to be. When he had Christopher Lee to privately film the sacking of the Shire, he opens and he had filmed the whole council. It's really. I don't know why he didn't film the sacking of the Shire. I mean, okay, from a writer and a filmmaker's perspective, I could understand why you wouldn't do the sacking of the Shire and why you wouldn't put that on film. It's sort of, I'm trying to see what the best. It's anticlimactic in light of everything else that was shown in the Peter Jackson films, in light of the destruction of the ring at Mount Doom, in light of the defeat of Sauron, in light of the Battle of Pelennor Fields, in light of the return of the king, Aragorn. In light of all that, the sacking of the Shire it's sort of like an add-on ending. From a filmmaking standpoint, okay, I'm not saying that Tolkien was wrong in the way he did it, and I do like that part of the book, but I don't think from a filmmaker's perspective, it's not necessary to show, right? And I think that's why Peter Jackson didn't bother to do it. It's because it's not necessary. It doesn't advance the Hobbit's story any more than with what Peter Jackson did give us, right? Yeah, I would. I mean, obviously, if you had access to Christopher Lee when he was alive, absolutely, I would want to film everything that I could with the man. But again, from a filmmaker standpoint, once you have the hobbits being recognized by everybody, the famous scene where Aragorn's like, my friends, you bow to no one and everyone bows to them. And then they go back to the Shire and they're, they've got the mugs and, that Sam's going to end up with Rosie and stuff like that. It's having the whole, we have to get there, and the Shire's sort of been overrun by Saruman and and Grima and their sort of henchmen. It's kind of not necessary. It's another fight that doesn't need to be fit. It would just drag it out more than, and there's no real payoff to it because you already know that the hobbits are victorious, and they're going to end up the way it ends. So from a filmmaking standpoint, I understand why that wasn't put in. The same way as from a filmmaking standpoint, I understand why Tom Bombadil was cut, and I'm totally okay with that. Anyway, but he gave us The Hobbit, which was weird. And the video movie reacted to regarding all the stuff of that era after Return of the King. Yeah, I mean, this could be like a prologue as the Hobbits. Yeah, again, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this stuff. But I don't know sometimes if, I think as a Tolkien fan, reading it versus filming it, sometimes I don't think you need to film all of the stuff. I think because a lot of the stuff is, and again, I don't want this to come across as a criticism of Tolkien and his work, but from a filmmaking standpoint, you would just be doing another version of the same thing, i.e. the same victorious ending, just you're showing 9 different versions of it, and the audience, people's attention span, especially nowadays, tends to be shorter. Already I've watched people react to Return of the King. You've watched some of these reaction channels, and literally just with what Peter Jackson did, they're like, oh, that's not the ending. Oh, that's not the ending. Oh, we have another thing. Oh, and it's like, literally, this is like the short version, right? Like if you read the book, the ending is, there's several more chapters compared to what Peter Jackson is showing you. So I don't think, you need to show everything. Yeah. Although the Russian stuff is freaking weird. I've seen some of that Russian stuff. Yeah, that's, some of it's like borderline creepy, bro. Like I'm like, is this Tolkien anymore? I'm watching like some like freaky version of like Dante's Inferno or something. Some of that stuff's just weird. Like they have no budget and they'll just do whatever it takes to like slap a costume together, and it's just bizarre. Like I've seen some videos of some bizarre Russian versions of Tolkien, and it's just kind of, it's creepy. It's just very freaking creepy. But yeah. So again, Makaru came through with the Tales of the Ring videos, and I will check out the link that you sent me to the short ones. And maybe next week what we'll do is we'll do a whole, I'll like put like 3 or 4 of them together, and we'll just like watch like 3 or 4 of them together. The films have to come out naturally, like the PJ stuff did. Yeah, again, it could work. I don't trust Hollywood to not screw it up. I mean, I said it. I don't trust Hollywood to not screw it up. Again, same thing like I was saying before about Dragonlance, right? There was a time I would have sold my soul to see a live action Dragonlance movie. Nowadays, if you ask me, I don't trust them to not screw it up. They would change Raistlin. And for those of you who don't know, he's one of the main characters. Think like a young Gandalf, right? Raistlin's sort of a young guy. He has a twin brother, Caramin. But Raistlin is sort of the frail one. Caramin's a strong, big fighter guy. Raistlin's sort of this frail, always coughing wizard. But he ends up becoming like super hyper powerful and at the same time very evil and non-caring, right? I'll just say that much. I don't trust Hollywood to get it right. I don't. Yeah, I think I did see the scary ones, dude, because the ones I saw, I was just looking at it as like, nah, dude. Like it was just like, it was like a 60-year-old Russian dude in like a spandex bodysuit that was green with green paint on his face and like green mouse ear things and vampire teeth, and that was supposed to be Gollum. And I was just like, nah, son, I'm out. Like, I can't do this. Like, I'm sorry, but I just can't. But yeah, so anyway, I don't trust Hollywood to be able to not screw it up. Yeah, I might have. If you got a link for a good one, you could send it to me. Um, you don't have to feel sorry for me. Like I said, I was just scarred for life. And that's just the way it is. No, actually, like I said, I just thought it was weird. I was just like, man, you guys in Russia, like, God bless you for trying, but oof, like, yeah, that if I that it was like nightmare fuel for like 6-year-olds, what I saw. But yeah, I don't trust Hollywood to not screw this stuff up. Again, I would love to see a Dragonlance live adaptation. Not 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 right now. Not the current state of Hollywood. I also don't want to see Hollywood turn the Legendarium into a cinematic universe. As much as I'm a Tolkien fan and would love to see live adaptations of like Baron and Luthien and first era stuff. I don't trust Hollywood at this point to do that stuff. But that's just me. I'm just one guy with one opinion. Oh yeah, absolutely. The worst of what I've seen in terms of like the Russian stuff and stuff like that is still better than Rings of Power. Like Rings of Power is just utter garbage in my opinion. Like it's literally the Rings of Power is what happens when you give fan fiction license to do whatever they want and to make it public. It's horrible. Pardon my French. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying this on a live stream. It's shitty fan fiction, is what it is. Rings of Power. So yes, even the worst. They would totally make any book reimagined. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. See, well, Weta Digital or the Weta Special Effects House. Those guys. I love the work that those guys do. Those guys do great. Yes, and they elven characters and armor and stuff like that. But again, it's ultimately what it comes down to is the producers and executive producers. They're the ones that have the final say and can even override a director on a film. And like with Peter Jackson, with Turiel, and that whole thing in The Hobbit. Producers and especially executive producers will override a director if they are dead set on doing something or putting forth a certain either their own worldview or ideology or agenda, whatever you want to call it. They will override a director, and that's just the way it is. And that's what I don't trust. See, there are good directors out there that I think could do Tolkien's Legendarium justice, or Dragonlance Saga justice, or even an Elder Scrolls live adaptation justice. There are directors out there that could do that. And there's even writers out there that could do that. But it's the producers and the executive producers, basically the people holding the wallets and holding the money for these things. They're the ones I don't trust. Because they're the ones that it's easy for them to say, well, let's just change the race, sex, religion, identity, whatever of this character to fit our modern 2023 sensibilities. And to them, it's no big deal, and they don't have to worry about any sort of fan, pushback or whatever. It's the directors, and the rest of the crew that have to live with that, with the consequences of that. And those are the ones I don't trust. Yeah. Speaking of which, like I said, I've got. Let me. You know what? I can try and pull up a picture real quick for you guys because I think, I tend to talk a good game sometimes, but sometimes I should just show you that. In fact, I am working on some stuff here. Okay. Let me see if I can bring this up on the screen for you guys. All right. Yeah, there it is. Right there. That's a still from a video that I'm working on. Again, there was a gentleman. He came out with the music of an Ainur. He actually wrote a song, the music of the Ainur, the Ainulindale, and I reached out to him because I think it's a really good musical take on that. And I reached out to him and said, hey, not for nothing, I really like what you got there, but can I use your song and try to sort of set it to some animation and motion graphics and stuff like that? And he was like, yeah, sure, have at it. So I've been working on that on the back end, and as you can see, I've got stuff, very Tolkien-esque stuff going on. Yeah, I kind of, it's been something I haven't been like keeping it like a secret or anything. I just haven't been talking about it much because I figured, well, why? I'm not going to toot my own horn. You know what I mean? Yes, it did. Especially when Arrow. Yes, yeah. This is this what I've been working on is sort of. It's not like a literal depiction. It's more like oh, thank you, I appreciate it. Thanks, Makaru. Yeah, and thank you, Dave. It's not a literal interpretation. It's sort of it's narrating the first like several paragraphs of the Einolindale up to the part where they say, "And the music ceased." And it's set to this gentleman. His name's Diego. It's set to his music. So there's narration and music, and I was sort of doing appropriate motion graphics and animations to go with it, and but I wanted to have some very specific, Tolkien-esque stuff, and this is one. I have another image, but it's very, it's got like the Balrog, pretty much doing the same thing that I've got here. I'll bring it up for you guys because I care. So yeah, that's another one with the Balrog, and I'll show you one last one. Okay, this is a Melkor sort of before there's anything proper, like any sort of Aya. So it's sort of got motion graphics like that. So that I've been working on. Let's make that a tapestry. So we can, yeah, yeah. I mean, we could technically. Sure, sure. So yeah, so that's the stuff that I've been working on. But yeah, so enough out there, and there's stuff. Yeah, exactly. That's why I sort of did that, and sort of manipulated that image because I wanted it to be both appealing, which you would think prior to his great fall, right? You would think that Melkor would be, right? He was like the greatest of all the Ainur, right? So I wanted it to both be appealing, yet at the same time you could see that there's that danger there, that the evil's coming. And that was sort of the vibe. But anyway, that's what I've been working on. But yeah. So having said that, guys, it's been an hour and 15, and I'm sure, especially, like Anthony, I know it's the middle of the night for you, and I am so sorry about this, bro. Again, if you can come up with suggested times, I will see what they are. My time, I'm Eastern US. And if I need to change some times because it's like in the middle of the freaking night for people. All right. I mean, hey, okay. Can I call you Vlad? If you're literally from Transylvania, I'd be like, Vlad. Hello there, Vlad. That would be awesome. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna call it a night. I think we'd get more good stuff from people if we tooted our own horn more often. Yeah, again, I know it sounds sort of cliche to say it like, oh well, I'm not all about me. Okay, Anthony is better. Fair enough, Anthony. I'll just go. We'll stick with Anthony. But I'm not about tooting my own horn, so that's why, like I said, it hasn't been a secret that I've been working on this video. It's just been one of those things where I'm just like, well, I mean, there's nothing really to say. I'm working on a video, right? It's Tolkien based. I'm working with, on a song that somebody else created that I thought was really good. There's no need for me to toot my own horn. Like I said, I'd much rather use my platform to show the other great work that other people are doing. I know I can do good work, but I want to see what other people are doing. I want to share it. Again, I'm all about wanting to build the community. And yes, I know there's a metric ton of trash out there that we can I can make video after video after video just talking trash about people, right? And about how this author of this article from this online publication doesn't know what the hell she's talking about, and this one and that one. I could do that all the time. And I will still continue to call out that nonsense. But at the same time, I also want to have some positivity, right? I also want to be able to say, hey, Tolkien fans, here's what's good in the community. Like, we know what's bad, right? There's a $1 billion marketing campaign to tell us what's crap with the community, right? But here's what's good. Let's focus on some of the good. Let's focus on some of this low-key awesome stuff that like Tales of the Ring are doing, or this guy Diego with his song, or the Silmarillion soundtrack, and like really good quality stuff out there that's sort of going under the radar because everyone's all, oh, look, Rings of Frickin' Power, the world's most expensive piece of trash ever. Anyway, that's just me. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna call it a night, guys. I want to thank you all as always for showing up. If you haven't subscribed, I would hope you consider subscribing. If you have subscribed, well, you guys are beautiful badasses. I always say it, right? We're trying to build the community, trying to spread the word and build some bonds. I might have some announcements coming up soon. I've been in contact with, let's just say, other YouTube content creators that are sort of in the same sphere. There may be some live streams in the near future with multiple personalities going on. But I can't commit to anything right now because things are still happening. Okay, so the next live will be next Saturday. Okay, be a week from today, next Saturday as of right now at 6 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so 6 p.m. Eastern U.S. Now, whatever that is, Macaru, do the math, okay? Because I expect to see you there because I'm gonna take those short videos that you sent me and that's what we're gonna be focusing on. Okay. So yes, next Saturday, 6 p.m. we will get together again. Watch some more of those videos. We will watch the shorts. We'll watch a couple of them. If there's any other news to talk about, if there's anything else going on in regards to the Dungeons and Dragons and the OGL stuff, I know it's a ongoing situation. They keep issuing comments, and there seems to be nobody's going to be happy anytime soon in that situation. And if I can, during the week I'll try to work in some more Elder Scrolls, some more Dungeons and Dragons, some more Dragonlance, as well as the Tolkien stuff. And we'll get this puppy rolling. All right. So anyway, thank you all for showing up. I'm going to call it a night. Remember to be good, be awesome, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.